y'all, welcome back to Chow with Chow. Today we're going on a journey to making my first ever 4-layer chocolate cake from scratch. This cake has espresso, cocoa powder, and melted chocolate, all working together to give it that really rich chocolatey flavor. And this is in honor of my fantastic brother-in-law's b-day, so shout out to Farhan. He's a really big chocolate lover, and we wanted to just make it super special for him. And you know what's better than a 3-layer cake is a 4-layer cake. This recipe is also from Claire Saffitz'sDessert Cookbook, Dessert Person. It's a pretty standard cake recipe, starting with creaming our butter and sugars together until it's all super light and fluffy. We really like using her cookbook because all her desserts are really delicious and refined without being like heavy or overly sweet. Now we're adding in our eggs and alternating adding in our dry and wet ingredients. This recipe actually called for coffee, but we added espresso instead, since that's what we had on hand, and it was such a flavor booster. It added just like a really nice depth to the cake, with a bit of bitterness to counteract the sweetness of the chocolate. Super fantastic, but again, I'm sure adding coffee would have just been super good too. And watching that melted chocolate fold in is so satisfying. Overall, I feel like birthdays have just really changed in their meanings. I feel like I miss the nostalgia of birthdays and being excited to get older. I feel like as we're entering in these late 20s and 30s and beyond, birthdays almost just kind of feel like a hassle. To take some time out of our day to celebrate ourselves, it feels like an interruption to our lives instead of a celebration. But I think there's such an importance to prioritizing and taking the time to celebrate our birthdays and trying to make it really special. And I think making an active effort to make it special. So at least for us, we always do a cake and we always have happy birthday balloons, and a new tradition is to wear a happy birthday hat and sing happy birthday so many times. It's just a nice excuse to celebrate together. The trickier part about this recipe was probably the buttercream. First of all, it started with whole entire eggs, which I've never seen before. And it technically is a French-style buttercream, so you have to make a sugar syrup and heat it to exactly 238 degrees Fahrenheit. So whip out that candy thermometer or meat thermometer, whatever you've got. And as you stream that syrup in, the heat actually cooks the eggs. So it was a little complex, kind of like macarons, but it did make the fluffiest, lightest buttercream I've ever had. Claire Savitz calls it her silkiest chocolate buttercream, and it truly was so glorious. My biggest concern was that as we were adding in that butter throughout the process, it was just oscillating in between being a little too soupy as the butter melted or just straight up curdling if the butter was too cold. But the biggest key and learning moment was just be patient and trust the process, because like the more we beat it, the better it looked. And then once we added in that like gorgeous melted chocolate, it got a lot smoother and more consistent. So gorgeous. It was so fluffy and super easy to spread. Frosting and assembling a cake is definitely my favorite part of the process. I wish I had a job where I could just frost cakes or make cakes all day. Well, maybe it's not like a job or like a full-time job, but it could be awesome just to like frost cakes all the time and practice decorating and practice doing the crumb coats. But what I don't like and what I definitely wouldn't want to do as this pretend job is cut this cake. Cutting this cake took years off my life. Making sure it was perfectly flat, making sure it was perfectly level, which it wasn't. The biggest hack though was fridging these cakes overnight, or at least for a couple hours. And it's so much better than cutting them when they're fresh out of the oven, because they were so soft they would have just fallen apart under my knife. Now we're adding in just this generous heaps of that fluffy frosting. Look at that gorgeous cake. Another layered cake that I've made is our Milk Bar birthday cake, and it's one of those cakes where you can see the sides. And I feel like seeing the sides of a cake is so pretty. Because once you cover it up, you're like, oh man, where'd those beautiful layers go? And you're not going to get to see it again until you cut it. But I do kind of like that naked cake style, like, oh, so gorgeous. So I'm going to think about next time. It's nice just to get to see all those layers. Once that crumb coat goes on, it's so easy to frost. Stick it in the fridge for a little to let it firm up. And then you just scoop the rest of your frosting and dollop it right on. Spread it around. It's so fun. You get to decide what design you want. This time specifically, we like smoothed out all the edges and made sure it was nice and flat. And then we played around with this palette frosting style. So I did take an acrylic painting art class, so it's kind of fun to get to use what I learned in art class to decorate this cake. And it just kind of has that palette knife look of little globs going around in circles. And I was inspired to do this because it's actually the same design that Claire Savitz has in her book for their food photography of this cake. So it's just so gorgeous. And again, it's so tall because this was a 4-layer cake, not a 3-layer because we're overachievers. But it was really just 2 6-inch cakes cut in half. And this cake turned out so gorgeous, so beautiful, truly was so delicious. It was chocolatey without being overpowering, decadent without being too sweet. Look at those gorgeous layers. But definitely worthy of a celebratory occasion. Happy birthday again to my brother-in-law. I'm so happy with how this turned out. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey, and see y'all next time.